right, here we are again. I'm a little late. What? 3 minutes late, but it's okay. I'm here. Um, the great thing about content creation is some things work like you. Sometimes they work like you want them, and sometimes they don't. I am going to be looking down at my notes to keep me on track. Welcome back to my channel. And I am Dr. Lianna Wimberly Williams, and I am my professional life singer, musician, classical singer and musician, turned business owner, entrepreneur. Yeah, and so here we are. We're talking today. A couple of days ago on my Facebook channel, I mentioned about being in a season of stretch and feeling misaligned in the rooms that you're currently in, and it potentially meaning that you are in a period of expansion where it's time to move to a bigger room, which can be scary. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. I've got notes. So when I posted it, it is because I was at that time in a bigger room. And so since then, I have been sitting with what that means, um, what it means, what are the signals that you have outgrown a space? How do you find contentment if you have to stay in the misaligned room? Or how do you remain in contentment as you transition to the other room? So I want to ground it in an essential question. And so the question for today is, what do you do when you realize that you've outgrown a room? And I guess, how do you realize that? So I want to first talk about ways in which you can know that you've outgrown a room. So for me, I got in this room, bigger room. It had nothing to do with music, had nothing to do with performance, classical music, none of the things. So I felt like a fish out of water. One thing I do know how to do is I know how to talk to people. I know how to put on a face. I know how to be myself, not put on a face. Be myself in a room when I'm talking to people. Be organically, authentically myself. I know how to do that. But I can say that I was clearly in a space that I hadn't been in before. And it did stretch me, but something happened. As I was listening to the presenters, and this was an organization, um, an organization of like transportation and aviation and airport management and things like that. And as I was listening to the facilitators and the panelists, something unlocked and opened in my brain, like a moment of creativity where it said, oh, so that means that I could connect with them when I want to or if I want to. And I realized, oh my goodness. So there are parts of myself and parts of my creativity that won't even unlock until I am in motion and move into the rooms that I won't say that I don't belong in, but until I move into the rooms I don't know yet that I belong in. So there's a certain level of motion that you have to be in order to get that type of feedback. And I was like, okay. Another thing that came up, looking at my notes, another reality of a stretch moment while I was in the room. It wasn't about me not belonging, but it also was recognition of the fact that there was an old identity that I realized existed. I realized that I had I transitioned into a newer identity, or a newer identity was forming. I was becoming someone who could think differently, think like the people who were in those rooms. And that was wild for me. Expansion has occurred. And for a long time, a certain level of expansion felt like anxiety. I'm in a new place of expansion and a new type of anxiety, but it's also excitement because I can look at where I was and I saw immediate shift in my perspective about being there. Even how I connected with myself, and I had to just I I posted immediately, which was another there's so many lessons in here. Um so that's kind of where that post came from. And I I had a conversation with a friend last night, and he is realizing an expansion and perhaps, a misalignment. And out of that conversation, I got some feedback and some triggers that you might be misaligned in a room, or it's time for a shift in room, or um so here's some triggers that I kind of came out of that conversation with. um Irritation at small thinking. So if you're in a room and there's perspective, there's a growth mindset, there's this is how this could be, and the people that you're engaging with or the situations that you find yourself in this space, they're not ready. They're not ready for forward thinking, the bigger thinking that you're thinking of. Well, that could mean that this is just a room that's not big enough for where you are. Feeling misunderstood, so they don't get it. I can tell you, in this entrepreneurship journey, you have to be in environments where, first of all, it's lonely here, but you do have to find the people who understand what you're doing and where you're going and what you're going through. So if you're constantly misunderstood, or your vision is just bigger than the people around you can grasp, then that could mean that you need to move into bigger rooms. Feeling underused. Yee. You know there are gifts and talents about who you are and your skill that are not being utilized, that are not being used. I talked about the creativity that kind of unlocked when I got into a different space, a bigger space. Well, if you're in a space right now and there are things about you that you know are not being used, then it could potentially mean you need a bigger room. Feeling unseen. As uncomfortable as the unseen the unseen is, it's worse to feel unseen in the spaces you are in constantly. And so I watched a sermon by Sarah Jakes Roberts, and she was talking about how it's time to change your environment. So I guess this is really what I'm talking. This is like a trend for my life right now. It's time to change your environments and at least assess them. Assess your environments and see if they're aligned, if they're growing you, if they're nurturing you. And a lot of times we don't think about stuff like that. And then another thing is being triggered by things that didn't bother you before. So when I first started in my professional journey of music, I guess I would consider my first start truly being when I became a music major. That was the beginning for me. And I was just excited because I was in math before that, which I could have been good at it, but I didn't want to practice it as much as you have to practice in order to get good at being, a future mathematician or statistician. But when I started music, it was an exciting thing. But as I got into it, I realized so much of myself that was being underused, undervalued, unseen, and it wasn't exciting anymore. And that just persisted. And in order to thrive in that space, there were parts of myself that I'll be honest, I had to deaden. Um, and so it bothered me, but I kept going because I was like, this is how musicians make money. So, anyway, another conversation for another day. So, I say all this to say if you find yourself in this space, I'm gonna put I'm gonna put my little notebook down. I'm gonna put my notebook down for a second. One thing I noticed once I realized it was time for an environment change, and I had no idea what was on the other side of that decision. But when you get to a point to where it's time for a shift, you may not immediately be able to move, but there are some reframes that I realized that I needed to have. One, so I could survive the space while I was in it. Two, so I could tweak what I say yes to and what I say no to. And there's a point of, like, for me there was a point in time where it's like, okay, I'm just investigating what moves me and what doesn't. Because when you are in a place of survival, at least for me, when I'm in a place of survival, the lines, they get a little muddy as to what I like, what I want to do, and what is just for survival. I just need a check right now. And so I I think you have to begin to just be curious about that. You have to be curious about what truly moves you and what doesn't, and be honest about it. Um because the first thing about realigning yourself with the rooms that are more compatible to you is you have to tell the truth about where you are. I had to tell the truth about where I was. I had to tell the truth about the fact that I was not stimulated emotionally by what I was doing, aka I was bored. And a lot of that was because there were parts of my musicianship that were underused and they weren't welcome. I'll, you know, digging into that is something I don't know that I've fully done yet, to be completely honest. And so now I don't know how I realized that I just needed something completely different. And right now I think I'm still in a space where I'm not running from music, but I'm saying no to a lot. I'm saying no to a lot. And the reason for that is what I have been inside, the music environments that I have been in. Um my voice can't my voice can't shine the way that it wants to. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really know how it wants to shine, but I am getting more reframes and more information about what's a yes and what's a no now that I'm in this business space. And so now that I am building, my message from a more holistic perspective about who I am, it's all just making more sense to me. So, as you figure out, I guess my message today really is Pay attention to what your body does. Pay attention to what your body does in the space that you're currently in. Pay attention to the triggers. Pay attention to if you feel like you're unseen or if you feel disconnected from what you're doing. Pay attention to it and begin to take notes and just be curious. Be curious about why that is. It doesn't mean that you'll necessarily make moves right now, but be more curious about what that is. Don't ignore it. And I think I ignored it for so long, that by the time I got more curious, I was angry at that point. So if I had been curious sooner or earlier, I don't think the anger and resentment would have come, because I am being true to myself. So anyway, that's all I got for today. I am really just, as a content creator, as a budding content creator, this process is about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Showing up imperfectly perfect. Perfect because you did the thing, and getting better at it. I will get good at content creation because I know that there are many things that I not only have to say, but there are things that are light to other people. And so the only way to get that message out is for me to do this, is for me to be imperfect, for me to do the thing poorly. And oh, what's crazy is I don't like being bad at things. I don't like being bad at things. And that's a testimony in and of itself. Um, but here I am, and I will be back next Thursday at noon. Um, so anyway, I will stop there. I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday at noon. If you have any topics that you want to hear about or you want to talk about, let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll keep coming here at Thursday at noon. This is conditioning for me, and I will see you on the next live. Bye.